Pray to my brothers and sisters. Pastor Catherine Weathers from Mom. So can you survive a divorce? A divorce can be a tremendous time of financial and emotional strain. Feelings are hurt, financial support and security is changing, and a complete lifestyle alteration occurs during and after divorce. Survival of a divorce can help you get motivated and ready for these changes. Are you able to survive a divorce and come out stronger? Or are you going to be trapped by the divorce? And we're still talking about divorce. The emotional stages of divorce. Ending your marriage is not just a legal technicality. There are also the emotional stages of divorce to work through. While not everyone experiences them to the same degree, there are predictable emotions that need to be recognized and worked through as outlined in the following. The Emotional Roller Coaster of Divorce. This is by Pauline H. Tesler. She has an MD and JD, and Peggy Thompson, PhD, author of Collaborative Divorce. And they give us 5 stages of grief, which we know is Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief. The first is denial, the second is anger, the third is bargaining, fourth is depression, and fifth is acceptance. Let's go on. Divorce is an emotional task, unlike any other in modern society, and different people experience it in different ways. While some individuals go through nearly all of the extreme emotional states that we describe here, others have an earlier or easier time getting through this period and will maneuver these choppy waters with more skill. The important thing is to remember is that all the emotions we discuss are normal, but while some are readily acknowledged by the people experiencing them, others are so uncomfortable that it's difficult even to admit they exist. The wide array of emotional states that many people experience during the early stages of the divorce process can diminish their capacity to think clearly, impair their judgment, and make rational decisions, making difficult or grief and sorrow. Being sad when a marriage ends is natural. Although it's painful, grief is a healthy emotional response to the loss of an important relationship. We are hardwired to feel it, and it wouldn't be reasonable to expect otherwise. While sorrow and grief can be very hard to handle, most people do understand and accept the inevitability of these feelings. We know from research, theoretical writing, and personal experience with thousands of people going through divorces that though the emotional impact of a divorce is as severe as that of a death in the immediate family, the grief and recovery process does have a beginning, middle, and end. Though they may seem endless, the pain and confusion surrounding separation and divorce do gradually lighten and finally go away. For most people, over a period of 18 months to 3 or 4 years following the natural separation, though recovery can be quicker or slower. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a pioneer in the hospice movement, First, describe the stages of grieving about and recovering from a major trauma such as death or divorce. 1. Denial. This is not happening to me. It's all a misunderstanding. It's just a midlife crisis. We can work it out. 2. Anger and resentment. How can he or she do this to me? What did I ever do to deserve this? This is not fair. Why did we get married in the first place? He told me that God said. Bargaining. If you stay, I'll change. Or if I agree to do it, money, child rearing, sex, whatever, your way. Can we get back together? 4th, depression. This is really happening. I can't do anything about it, and I don't think I can bear it. 5th is acceptance. Okay, this is how it is, and I rather accept it and move on than swallow in the past. Understanding these stages can be very helpful when it comes to talking about divorce and decision making. It's important to know that when you are in the early stages of this grief and recovery process, it can be challenging to think clearly or make decisions at all, much less to make them well. Identifying your present stage of grief and being aware of it is an important step towards ensuring that you will make the best choices you can. Guilt and shame. Experiencing guilt and shame is also a normal reaction to the end of a marriage. These feelings arise when we feel a sense of failure, of not having fulfilled our own or our community expectations. In the case of a divorce, people often feel guilt and or shame because they have failed to stay married for life. That's partly a matter of personal expectation, not fulfilling the promises made to a spouse, and also partly a matter of not fulfilling what our culture seems to expect from us. If our culture expectations about marriage and divorce are reasonable, if they fit well with how people actually behave in that culture, and we don't measure up, the guilt and shame felt at the time of divorce may be appropriate. If the culture's expectations don't match well with the reality of marriage and divorce, as people actually live it, the guilt and shame can be much more problematic. Problematic. Difficult to see clearly, difficult to acknowledge, difficult to manage in a divorce. In addition, there are some marriages in which one or both partners have engaged in extreme of betrayal, deceit, or even criminal behavior that almost always involve feelings of guilt and shame. Regardless of whether the feelings arise from not having met one's own or the culture's idea or from actual wrongdoing, we know that for many individuals, guilt and shame can be so painful that they change very quickly into other, more tolerable feelings, such as anger or depression. often without the person even knowing that the guilt and shame are there. This is why it is so common in divorce for each partner to blame the other, and why it can be so difficult for divorcing partners to accept responsibility for their own part in a failed marriage. Yes, my brother and sister, you failed in your marriage. So it's time to just face up to it. We've encountered few divorcing people who find it easy to see or accept their own feelings of guilt and shame. These powerfully negative feelings often remain under the radar, hidden and invisible, where they do the most harm. Strong feelings of guilt or shame can make it difficult or impossible to take in more balanced information, to maintain your perspective, and to consider realistically your best alternative for how to resolve problems. Guilt can cause spouses to feel they have no right to ask for what they need in a divorce, causing them to negotiate unbalanced, unrealistic settlements they later regret. Family lawyers have a saying that guilt has a short half life, and because guilt is such an uncomfortable feeling, it can easily transform into anger. We often see people who have negotiated guilt driven arguments or agreements having second thoughts and going back to court to try to set aside imprudent settlements. Let not that be the case with you, because it wasn't in the case with me for neither my marriages. The first one, we had nothing. The second one, we had a house, which I was going to just give him. I walked away from it just to come to check on the kids and found out if we divorced and I left him with the house, he wouldn't have kept it. So I took it. And the third, he had nothing and he wasn't leaving with me selling the house and splitting the proceeds that he didn't do anything with. So, yes, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, you need to really assess what's going on. And if you're not emotionally capable, that's where the lawyers come in at. Your lawyer will see things much, much more clearly than you. I loved it. There was a movie called The War of the Roses. Oh, God. I had to take my ex husband to see that movie to let him know that if we fought over this house, we both would end up dead. If you can find that movie, it's hilarious. And just for the fun of being able to laugh, which is very hard when you're going through a divorce, I advise you to look at that movie. Similarly, shame often transforms into blame, anger, or rage directed at the spouse. Bitter fights over children or property can be propelled by feelings like these because Martin divorces Sutton brand either partner as Snow White or Hitler, Prince Charming or the Wicked Witch, and therefore the anger which needs to go somewhere goes into fights over matters that courts are permitted to make orders about. Fear and anxiety. Fear and anxiety are common because of our hardwired fight or flight instinct. Our bodies react to stresses such as an angry phone call from a spouse by using physical alarm mechanisms that haven't changed since our ancestors had to react instantly to avoid being eaten by saber-toothed tigers. You react to stress physiologically in the following way. Your heart speeds up and adrenaline pours into your bloodstream. Your adrenaline makes your heart contract more forcefully and may cause you to feel a pounding sensation in your head. You may feel hot flashes of energy. Your attention home in on the event that triggers the strong feeling, limiting your ability to take in new information. When people are under chronic and severe stress, they may have anxiety attacks in which they tremble and their heart pounds, or they may be paralyzed by almost overwhelming feelings of fear that seem to come out of nowhere. We work with many people who experience these feelings as their marriages end. People who feel overwhelmed or confused in this way tend to fall back upon old habits of thought and actions rather than looking into intelligently at the facts of their situation and weighing the best choices for the future. Old arguments die hard. As marriages become troubled, couples often rely on old habits of dealing with differences that lead to fight rather than solutions. If those old habits didn't lead to constructive solutions during the marriage, they will surely yield no better result during the divorce. In addition, people feeling anxious and fearful may resist pressure to move forward and resolve divorce. Related issues because of feeling unready, while their spouses may be impatient, seeing no reason why the divorce wasn't over months ago. Bitter fights in the divorce court often stem from differences such as these. And also, let me say this. There are times when you don't even have to go to court if you have the right lawyer. But if you do have to go to court, keep your cool. It's almost over. Unfortunately, both our court systems and our culture are large, encourage us to take action in divorces based on how we feel when we are at the bottom of the emotional roller coaster, when we are most gripped by anxiety, fear, grief, guilt, and shame, especially for many Jewish women who do not get the consent by their rabbi, because then they're shunned from their homes, their children, and their family members. After all, that's when most people are moved to make the first call to a divorce lawyer. As a result, people are encouraged to make short side choices based on emotional reactions that do not take into account anyone's long term best interest. The resulting bad divorces harm everyone and serve no one well. They are very costly. They fail to plan intelligently for the future, and they inflict psychological scars on both the adult and the children. And yet, if there's no children involved, don't play mind games. If there are children involved, the best thing you can do is what Brad Pitt and Angela is doing. Think about the children. You know, at first she was just trying to keep them away from the children, but she's learning it's better to think about the children. Because experiencing the emotional stages of divorce is comparable to riding a roller coaster, but you can get through it. So I just want you to know that there are things that we don't want to happen, but have to accept. Things we don't want to know, but have to learn. And people we can't live without, but have to let go. And this is by Unknown.